Forward now. Okay, so hello everybody. We're back to talk about chapters 2 and 3, right? And as I pointed out, there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of very interesting dialogue in these two chapters. So I wanted us to focus on that. And I just wanted to really briefly just say something, repeat something that Rand wrote about dialogue. She wrote that for the most natural dialogue, you must speak from your premises, she said. Speak from your premises, knowledge, and estimate of the situation. And then in terms of this intensity that she had with characters, this is very interesting if you think about how quickly her dialogue goes. Your mind must know the connection between certain abstractions and their concrete expressions so well that you can write for 3 or 5 or any number of people, constantly switching premises in your mind. So I think that's interesting in terms of just the way that she thought about dialogue and what she was trying to do with it. You puzzled? Did I?
I didn't understand that, when I first read it. I thought that was being simplistic and kind of didactic. But the older I get, and the more I reread her, the more I think I understand what she was talking about, where she was coming from. It makes sense, because if you don't do it that way, you just waste time. It's just endless verbiage. And an example of the almost polar opposite is the chapter in the Fountainhead that we began with yesterday. Some of us who were there at that meeting, where you had the American Council of Writers, who were speaking like postmodernists, just absolutely crazy talk. A sentence that doesn't, that stops in the middle and doesn't go anywhere, and then another sentence that has absolutely no relation to what was said before.
Right, but then in terms of her skill in dialogue,
Yes.
she was able to capture that disconnect that she saw in their thinking. And
and the play that I was searching for, that she was lampooning, with No Skin Off Your Nose, the censored version, was The Skin of Our Teeth by Thornton Wilder, and I'm almost sure that was what she was referencing.
Okay.
One observation I have is that, can you imagine, using your imagination, that a therapist starts conversing with you about the issues that his patients has?
Yeah.
So if they see 10 people a day, well, that's well, that's two. But
right.
Over a week, they have 15 patients. They become intimate with their neuroses and their problems and their premises. If they could tell you what that person would say to a situation, they would have a good sense of it. And
yes.
I think the ability to imagine a room full of patients.
Right. And Dr. Brandon devised his own technique, which was inspired by a psychodynamic technique that was used in the military, which was sentence completion. And it worked rather well at getting to something. A person freezes up, and if you do enough of it, you finally hit something that's upsetting you, and then you can go deeper. And that's what he found. I haven't seen anyone else using that, but it worked for him.
All right. Well, why don't we look at some of those conversations? I'm wondering if there's anything in particular that we read for these two chapters that somebody would like to discuss. No? I can bring up, I'll suggest a few things.
Yes.
Marilyn?
he, a quote, he was coming back cured, strong, saved. She had lived 8 months for one telegram. She had never looked beyond it, beyond the telegram. There was no future.
Mm. Okay. Okay. What page are you on?
That is, well, that's the end of the first section of the
Oh,
chapter
right. Yeah. Yes. That was very good. Well, and that goes back to that beginning, right? Where she says, um, it doesn't matter. He'll come back saved, right?
it doesn't matter what happens, just as long as,
As long as he,
yes. So her vision is stopping. She can't think beyond him showing up. And it
Right.
doesn't matter. Nothing, the relationship doesn't matter. Nothing matters. But that end of that there was no future is a play on words. If it's a play on words, it's like
yeah,
literally there's no future.
right. It's very startling that, right? And, right, because what is happening to her? If she says here, if one could reduce one's life to but one desire, life could be cold, clear, and bearable. It had been a drug and it disinfected. It had burned everything out. He says other people might have emotions now, she doesn't. So what's happening to her?
Um,
Marilyn, I think it's interesting the role reversal between Andre and Kira, where at the end of the third chapter, Andre was the one who was speaking about being oneself and living life for yourself, and Kira was acting like it didn't matter to her and it really wasn't that important. So it seems like she shifted a total position 180 degrees from the way she was in the first group of chapters to this point in this book, because life doesn't seem to be as important to her as it used to be, for whatever reason.
That's a real good point. That's a really good point, because I remember, yes, they're speaking about the Song of Broken Glass.
Right.
And it no longer has the same sanctity for her, but he's discovered it.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And transformed by it.
And what is
Exactly.
she says, let's have a couple drinks, right? Let's have a drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Del, Lindsay, do you have any thoughts about this? About Kira?
I thought that this theme of there is no future, there's only the present was a big theme throughout these chapters, throughout the whole book really, but especially through these chapters. Kira has been waiting for the future for the last 8 months. She's been living for the point at which Leo's coming back, and now he's back, and now it's back to the bleak reality of the situation in which she's living. It's back to survival, trying to survive what's going on around her.
Oh, that's an interesting point. So there is no future can be looked at a couple ways, both in there's no future and also I don't have to live for the future now. The present will come back, which is interesting. But in the getting there, then she does, as Ron and Charles point out, she does undergo some changes, sort of a coarsening of her personality that is going to affect what happens to her decision making.
Yeah, when you have to reduce yourself to a concrete bound regimen day after day after day, it will do things to you.
Yeah.
And one of the things that it does to you is that you are not operating at the level that you could be. And it of course it's going to transform her. And it's interesting because during that sequence when they went out and heard the music, she just heard it. He was affected by it, Andre. And it's almost as though Andre were becoming a little bit more like Leo in the process.
Yes. And Ronnie pointed that out too. But of course, what's the problem with that for Andre? Adele?
Well, I think Andre has competition, and at least at this point, Kira is still deeply in love with Leo. And although Rand doesn't give us a lot of insight into the relationship in these two chapters, other than he's there but he doesn't seem to have the same sort of drive as he did at the beginning of the book in terms of finding a way for himself and taking care of Kira and getting a job and doing the things that they want to do together. He seems to have lost his desire to live, other than he's healthy again. And so it just seems to me that Leo is a different character as well.
Yes. Everyone has shifted dramatically, right?
Yeah.
In these chapters, and they're very different people.
I think also that Kira is living with the premise of the ends justifies the means, and that is coming back to really haunt her. I mean, it's affecting her. So she's like, well, I can be with Andre, I can take his money, I can do this. But if she was in a real relationship with Andre, I don't think she would care about the money. I mean, it wouldn't be a real issue. But I mean, she wouldn't. She might take something for her family as a gift. With protecting Leo, it was paramount. She just take all his money, and she didn't care what happened.
Right, exactly.
And that's going to be affecting her psyche.
Yeah, I'm reminded, and I made a note on it yesterday, which I don't have before me. Sister Carrie by Theodore Dreiser, where the theme was basically everything for love, and it destroys the man. They made a movie out of it with Olivier, which is worth seeing if you ever find it. But it basically she starts to disintegrate almost as soon as she starts to lie, because this is a person who cannot lie.
That's interesting. I'll look it up. The other thing here is that these aren't people who are doing these things because that's how they really are. I mean, we have to bring in the fact that the system that they find themselves in has forced all of them to make decisions that are that go against, or that have to fudge their principles in order to try to survive.
That's the theme, right? Because it's the system, and it's like crushing down on people, and they have to scurry like rats to find a way to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And none of the choices that
I think that everyone in the novel are victims of their circumstances. And
I had a friend in Holland when I was going to art school, and he was an architect and a sculptor, and he believed he could make it under any system.
Mm-hmm.
And so he thought it was only about his own will. And I thought that was interesting, because it was like, I was already familiar with, I don't know if I'd read We the Living, but I'd read The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged.
Right.
And I thought, no, the system actually matters. You have to actually say, this is my environment. What can I do within this environment to thrive or to be flourishing? And then if you see that there's no way, I don't know.
Yeah, you know, you're reminding me. I was struck by an interview with Julian Barnes not so long ago, and an author that I normally admire quite a bit. But he was working on a book by on Shostakovich, and the fact that Shostakovich got co-opted by the Soviet government and pretended to go along with things, but he really hated it. Um, they asked him point blank what he would do in a similar circumstance. He said, well, of course I would do whatever I needed to do to continue to write. And I was just dumbfounded by that remark. It is that he would try to survive under that system by placating the state. And it was a stunning confession.
Mhm. Well, yes, it's appalling, but what other choice
Yeah.
have? Um,
I'm like, just figure out how to paint.
just figure out how to paint.
Yeah.
Lindsay, what do you think? You've been quiet so far.
The what?
Well,
From Lindsay.
I guess I was still sort of thinking about at least your questions just about Kira and what's happening with her. And I feel like, you know, she kind of, for a long time, has been operating with this one goal in mind. Like, she was doing all of these things for this one thing, that this person would come back whole and healed, and he came back and he was healthier, but his outlook is really the same as it was when he left. And I think that she was maybe hopeful that it would be different, or that it would be somehow like more energizing for her than it really has turned out to be. Like, he's still sort of like, I'm healthy now, but I really, you know, I don't really have anything else to give you.
Right.
And I think for someone who's been, you know, I don't know, I think she kind of invested all of her hope in that. And now it's come back and it's kind of, it's not there. I feel like right now Leo is kind of the only one who's like really being true to himself within the system. Like, as frustrating as that feels to me, where he's just like, still not going to participate. Like, you know, I'm not going to do all these things. Like, you know, I think he's concerned about repaying this faux debt that she's sort of told him she's been where she's been getting the money, and so now they have to figure out a way to get it back. But outside of that, I feel like, you know, everyone else is kind of making all these compromises. Like, Kira's family is suddenly, like, her mom is like all about being a communist now, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, even Kira is like going through the motions of doing her job. So everybody is kind of, I think, fallen into this system and kind of accepted, like, well, we just have to do these things even if we don't like them. And, you know, there's still this one person who's come back who's like, no, you know, I'm still not really participate in this.
Yeah, everybody's adjusting. Well, there's that really horrible, just awful conversation that they have in terms of what Leo says to her and how it must have been so hard for both of them to have this conversation on page 272 when she says, isn't the worst over, Leo? And he says, well, I have nothing but a healthy body. And she says, well, what else do I want? And he calls himself a gigolo.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And it confuses her a minute. And she's like, what? And he's like, well, that's what I am. And all right, and she says, but don't you love me? And he says, yes, I do, but I hate, but it's terrible. You brought me back. You did all this for me. You brought me back here for what? For me to have nothing, right? To have nothing to hope for, nothing to do, nothing to live for. And I wish I hated you, right? He says. So just imagine that conversation. What did you think?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like when we talked before, like before when he was leaving, this sort of view of death, his own death, as an escape from this terrible situation. Like, you know, he could go to all this trouble to live, but what is the point? Because they're in this situation that they can't get out of. And so he did it, but, you know, now he's like, okay, well, the thing that I wanted to get out of, I still can't get out of. And now, you know, maybe I'm going to resent you for not letting me take the escape that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's okay. You saved my life, but why? For what purpose?
Yeah.
What life? And she's just not. I mean, sort of a reaction of disbelief. Well, let's just go from one step to another step to another step, concrete bound, as she doesn't have an answer for him.
Yeah, and he even
And-
says, oh, go ahead, Michael.
And like Lindsay said, that he's the one who's Leo is the one being most reasonable about the whole situation.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, I want to help. You took care of it. And did he mention that it almost would have been better to die? I don't know if, I thought there was a little hint of that. But he does, he goes on to say, I've got my health, but there's nothing to live for here except I love you, but I also feel horrible because you saved me, and I'm not sure I wanted to be saved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It says, Kira, I wish you weren't what you are. Right. So it's almost as if if it weren't for her giving that just even slightest bit of possibility, he would have been long gone. But that the fact that she keeps him in this hopeless situation is terrible. But imagine that being your love.
Mm-hmm.
That marvelous character come up next.
Yes.
The woman that arrives at the door.
Oh yeah.
Was it who?
Antonina Pavlovna.
Rich, and she's manipulative, and she's an amazing character. But the gigolo thing was obviously like he played that woman a little bit, probably in his vacation.
Yes. And
Carryover, yeah.
right.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we should talk about her. All right. So we get to. Well, actually, let's not. Let's just do briefly that little bit. Every time I want to talk about Irina, we never get to her. We haven't talked about her really for during the whole book. So there's this subplot now that shows up with Irina and Sasha, right? And I was wondering what you think about them, especially in light of what we were talking about, where everybody's character has shifted a great deal now. At least our main characters, but Irina and Sasha seem to be a steady influence at the moment. That's my perception.
Well, Sasha's the brief understanding we have of him is that he's an authentic revolutionary, and he's plotting against the state.
He's a counter-revolutionary, yes.
Counter-revolutionary, yeah. And he has, at that moment, he has like a beautiful moment where he's hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
He's excited, motivated. He knows he's fighting on the right side. We only get hints of it, but it's very, very appealing. But with everyone else's experience, the cynicism is like, oh, they're going to kill him. He's going to, or diminished. I mean, so you have a fear for him as being either killed or he just can't, they just put him in a straitjacket and he just can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I don't know why he's with Irina.
Well, and what's Irina's stance in terms of the revolution? How has she been? Remember, she's the artist, right? And she, while she has the job, the sign painting job or whatever, she does it badly. I mean, she can't cognitively, she can't paint those.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yes.
There's this propaganda poster of Lenin. So it's a Russian propaganda poster of Lenin, and it's in a train station. So it's the train coming in with the smoke. Everything looks very modern and exciting, like Murder on the Orient Express. It looks wealthy. It's pulling into the train station with iron railings and stuff. And they have an iron balcony. Not balcony, bridge that covers over the walkway. It covers over the train tracks.
Mm-hmm.
there's a poster of Lennon. And in this poster, the steam from the engine is waffling up and covering the face of Lennon.
Yeah. Oh, so a little subversion there.
Who has Irina's job, but then she's sabotaging it a little bit by having the smoke kind of muffle and kind of diffuse Lennon's face.
Deface him.
That's how artists can get away with stuff.
Yes, and she seems incapable of just doing it the right way, right? So something, and she's always, she gets yelled at. But the two of them too, they have the way she, Rand says about Sasha, he has a big hand, a firm handshake, is some timidity, candid. It's a disarming grin. In terms of qualities that you need to survive in Petrograd at that point, how adaptable are those qualities, do you think? Mm-hmm.
You're talking about Sasha?
Yes. So in terms of the sorts of things that people have to go through, being candid, kind of timid, sweet, very good natured, how is that?
He has no future. The poor guy.
Okay.
None.
Yeah, that's what I took away from his characterization. A nice chap and all that, and basically as good as dead or imprisoned in the new system, or the new system.
Yes. So we have qualities that ideally I think are good, right? One would want to be able to be candid and good natured. I have a real handshake, a certain sweetness about you, right? But here, obviously, there's just no. So I think they're being set off as something that's trying to survive, characteristics, a way of life, a type of person who's trying to survive. And I think it's important she put them here because, and that there's that great, most of this chapter, this bit in the family is all dialogue. We've got Victor there as well with all of his barbs about the party. Ron, you were laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to comment on something, Victor?
Well, I just think that family discussion was a hoot. I mean, you got the mother who's clearly thinks she's more successful than anyone else in the family, and degrading the father and praising Victor, and it's just like, what happened to these people?
Yeah, talking about the educational system, and I thought I was reading a lecture from John Dewey at that point.
Yes,
and I think that was on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to see this family splinter, and now they're all saying that they're communists or they're party members. They don't want anyone to hear anything else for fear of their own lives, and I think that's part of what's going on also.
Right, and there's that instead of a certain kindness between them, affection between them. Now there's just jockeying for position all of the time, right? And even Victor, he says, "Don't forget, I'm feeding you," right? It's a very cruel statement. As if I'll cut you off from any food if you don't behave yourselves. So
I guess,
family.
Marilyn, I think the line that surprised me the most was that the mother was bragging about how much she gets paid to do what she does, except they paid her in oil that was rancid. And I'm going, really?
They got a lot of it.
I mean, it's like why work if you're going to get paid in rancid oil? Really?
Yeah.
Yes. But but clearly she's adapted the values, and she's thinking, oh well, this is what it means. This is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, also they have that contrast with the boss of the private company that is now worse off than them.
Right.
Because adapting because Victor became part of the party, and the mother is, being a teacher in the party, and has a government job. So they're all being kind of like stabilizing, even though it's poverty. It's at least stable,
Yes. Yes.
and it's tough to see.
It is. It is. It's very tough to see. So, but right. So we're at subsistence level here. We're bickering. We're jockeying for a position. Everybody is hungry, and now we have, and then we have these two, Sasha and Irina, who are trying to stay human. I think trying to just stay who they are. And then we have
But
Dina Pavlova show up.
Isn't Irina the one that gets involved in the mysticism?
No, that's Lydia. She's the sister.
Right.
She's always been a mystic.
Okay. Right. Good. Okay.
Yeah. Irina's the artist. I remember she drew. We never talked about that, but she drew the picture of Leo.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. All right. So now here we are, the knock on the door, and this Antonina Pavlovna Platoshkina, and forgive me, I don't know Russian, how to pronounce that, but she shows up, and so let's talk about that. Anybody want to venture?
Well, I love the character. I like a breath of not fresh air, but it was like Las Vegas showing up.
Right.
Yes.
Very vivid. No, she's thriving, right? Here's a character.
Absolutely thriving and a manipulator and kind of realistic. And she knows what her values are. Like, not what her values are. She knows what her value to other people is. She's connected.
Mm-hmm.
And she lets people know she's connected. And she's outspoken. I thought she was a very colorful character to come in. It was nice to see, with all the gray and the drabness, it was kind of nice to see even a superficial person to show up all bubbly.
Yeah. Again, lots of energy. She's thriving. So where does this come from? How is she? Because she's very she's well dressed, right? She's got very good clothes on. She's got makeup on, and she is very energetic. Remember, she was at the sanatorium, but why was she there?
For her nerve.
For her nerve. Right. Now, do you remember, think back, remember what Kira had to do to get Leo into the sanatorium because he had TB, right? But clearly she does regular visits to this. Okay. So what is it how is this possible? What is her situation?
She's a mistress to the guy who's connected. He's the director of all the distribution of the food.
Coco,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and what's this deal with Coco? What does he do?
He's a corrupt speculator doing side deals, probably with the party members.
Mm-hmm. Right. So there's supposedly this redistribution, right? This distribution of food where everybody is supposed to get what they need and want, right? But so what happens though? It gets controlled by. There's like a gangster, right? Now we've got a bunch of gangsters, and they are running. They're running the show and buying and selling, and this is now what's thriving. In terms,
is that what you call a mole? No, a mall. What's the word for a woman who's the
mall? Yeah,
mall. Yeah, MOLL, mall. Yeah. That's an interesting point. And the interesting thing is that her her conversation is very elliptical, in the sense that she will talk around things, but never actually say them. And it goes on like the kind of trite small talk that Rand herself hated, but she would write it in the characters who were maybe very, very conventional. She mentions Coco, so she wants you to know that she's involved with a party member, but she doesn't actually come out and say that. It's just sort of, she talks about the sanitarium and she talks about Leo, but she doesn't actually say in specifics how she came to know Leo. So it's interesting. Yeah, she is very entertaining and she's very colorful, but she never actually says anything directly.
So if you think about, remember we talked about last week about Petrograd and how we had that history of Petrograd, right? And if you think about now and what has happened to the main characters and now the arrival of this character, I think what Rand is doing is setting up this trajectory of now what the future, what it will mean to be human, what you'll need to, the kind of person that will survive or thrive in this world, in this culture.
And Kira couldn't stand her.
Well, let's talk about that. What does Kira say? Kira, who's up to this time been a person of great empathy, right? Affection,
yeah,
capable of love, and it's certainly, while not an altruist, she's not someone who has hurt anyone up to this point, right? So then, what does she say? What does she says?
I think she's channeling Dominique a little, saying that kind of person doesn't even deserve to look at you.
Right. She doesn't even call her a person, right? She says, "Where did you find that?"
Who is she?
Yeah.
Not even she, but it's total dehumanization. Where did you find that?
Yeah.
If it were, a piece of trash that you picked up out on the street, right? And
There's a quote by this woman. What's her name? This flamboyant woman.
And Tony. He calls her Tonya. Leo does, yeah.
To understand you, she's talking about Leo, to understand you is a whole science in itself. And the first duty of every real woman, I've mastered it thoroughly in the bitter classroom of experience.
I thought she was a hoot. I think Kira despises her and just sees no value in her life. But I'm curious if Kira is jealous, because clearly she made a point of saying that she and Leo were good friends in the sanitarium, and what relationship did they actually have? No one knows.
Right.
But at this point, Kira is questioning this gal's existence, and one wonders why she worked so hard to find Leo. I mean, she went out of her way to find out where Leo lives.
Right.
And we're under the premise at this point that she'll never come back. She only visited once, and we will never see her again. But I can't believe that's true.
Right.
Well, I think the reasons that she came to look for Leo are the reasons that Kira loves Leo too, right?
But she also has oh, never mind, I forgot my thought.
Well, Charles, I want to comment on something that you were saying about how she sort of talks around things. But if we think about characters and Rand having that sense of integrity, right, for a character, but where is the core of we'll call her Tonya? Where is the core for her? Torbs.
Uh,
Well, don't you think it's in her study of the mysticism, of the uwa?
The
And,
theosophy.
and that's kind of what
theosophy. Yes,
that's
right.
kind of what she said,
Yeah.
that was what drove her, was her
Right.
study of human philosophy and of the religious and spiritual and all this stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
And I think that's what drives her. And that may be what motivates her to chase after Leo, and that, because she sees him as a vulnerable sort of guy that she can manipulate.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because I remember reading something that she said about theosophy, and it showed up in Antonia's talk at the tail end of it. You know, she was very, very spiritual and all this blather. Yeah.
Right.
But the suspicion, as I was reading through it, though, what it seemed to me that what she was talking around was a possible liaison with Leo, which he didn't confirm or deny, and
Right.
I think that probably sent steam out of Kira's ears.
Well, she brings up that point that she seems relieved when she hears what Kira's last name is, right? That
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
all right. So
Yeah.
she realizes, okay, well, you're not
So
married.
they're not married, so game's on, you know.
Yeah.
Kira to criticize the woman when she had her own thing going on. That must have killed her to like say, how can you associate with that thing? And she's, I can't bear that she even looks at you. And Kira must have thought, oh my God, how can I be? I'm a hypocrite. I can't say this.
Well, and all the time there's a letter from Andre laying on the table.
Right.
Right. And she spent the last 8 months, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
While so even just, I suppose she never occurred to her while Leo was away that something might have happened, even though she had been doing something like that as well. But it's horrible. I mean, we laugh about it uncomfortably, I think, but it's a horrible situation.
so it's also projection. So, you know, like in our relationships, we've had people cheat on us or we've cheated on them. Well, I can speak from experience.
Oh, I also think it was interesting in their meeting when Kira finally does get back to Andre, that he openly tells her that he loves her. And you know, not once did she say she loved him, but clearly he's fallen in love with her. And you know, the fact that he sent the letter to get her to call him on the phone, and it had only been 2 weeks. I mean, so it's like there's more to that relationship than we know at this point, I think.
Right.
But I don't know.
It's interesting when he says that to her, she's unmoved, right? She doesn't.
Yeah, she had no reaction. I mean,
But
she didn't say it back. She didn't like kiss him or do anything. I mean, she just like sat there and watched him say it.
But she did say, and I believe it's true, that she saw his hunger and she wanted to feed it. So she saw his love and his passion and she wanted to match. So I thought that was, you know, more than a compromise. I thought it was as much as you could humanly do, empathetically. And
yeah. Michael, do you think she feels like she's betraying Leo if she does?
Yes, but it's...
Yeah, it's like...
pragmatic. It's like, well, but I get money and I can save Leo and I can feed this guy's hunger and I'm not going to think about it too much. I'm not going to go into ethics. I'm not going to...
Yeah, but she didn't take Andre's money. She gave it back to him.
Well, at that moment, yes.
Yeah, I mean...
And that's the end of the relationship is showing up. but I don't know what happens. I don't remember what happens.
Yeah.
Good. Well, it'll be good reading for next week. But Adele or Lindsay, how about you in terms of Andre or Tonya? Any comments?
Well, I think that with Andre, um, she still does respect him. She still likes him. I think that she was hoping that his hunger would be satisfied with those few months that they had together, even though she probably knew on a deeper level that it wouldn't be, knowing the kind of man he is, and the fact that he loves her says something about him. And so she shouldn't have expected that it would evaporate once that hunger was satisfied, that it would only intensify. She didn't feed the hunger, she fueled the fire.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate to say this, but what's the consequence here for Andre?
Explosion is going to happen.
Yeah, it's.
I think
not
he could
good.
lose his position in the party. I mean, he's
Yeah.
messing around with a bourgeois. You know, it's like, really? And you know, he could get himself in some really deep squat if he's not careful.
He's carrying on as though he's invincible, and compartmentalized, right? But he doesn't see the train wreck that's going to be coming on eventually. I don't remember the spaces, the interstices between where we are now at the end of chapter 3 and the ending of the book, but it seems to me that sparks are going to fly. These guys are going to meet, and it will not be pleasant.
Well, he does ask about Leo, right?
Yeah,
I hope you don't see him often, he says to her, right?
right.
Right, exactly. And
No,
she's living with.
Yeah, and then Leo says, so you're taking presents from him?
Right?
Yeah.
When he comes back. So these two guys know that the other person exists and that there's a sort of relationship with the other person, but they don't know the actual truth.
And remember Victor? Remember what Victor says earlier?
Well, I think there's a sleeper in Victor. I really do.
Because
I think
I was talking about Kira, how everyone's always talking about Kira. So she might think,
Right.
I'm doing this,
Yes.
and it's a very private thing. It's not, no one else knows what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
everyone.
Well, hell hath no fury like a communist who's unrequited in love, and that's Victor.
Yeah,
or
I think
Rust,
Victor's
I should
sleeper.
say.
I really do. I think he's gonna cause some real problems for Kira, and for Andre, and especially for Andre. I think. I mean, if Victor comes around the back door, and exposes Andre's malcontent. There's some real issues to be had. So.
Well, one thing about cults and totalitarian societies is that their favorite hobby is hunting for thought crimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you find a thought crime, chances are you can make up or discover a real crime. That's North Korea now. And that's many parts of the Islamic world. And it still happens. Mm-hmm. And that was the Soviet Union. So it's someone's going to make trouble for both of these guys, one or the other.
Either that or Lady Sonia.
Yes.
Because she's still in the background too, and we don't know what she knows and doesn't know.
Right. Michael, I'm sorry.
What? Yeah. One thing that I've been finding interesting is that the oppressive to write this kind of horrific struggle, and it's almost sadistic. Taking really good people and just wheedling away at them and putting them into impossible situations. and then how Ayn Rand, looking at the trajectory of Ayn Rand's career, or the arc of Ayn Rand's career, how he resolved that in The Fountainhead and in Atlas Shrugged. But what I find interesting is that after Atlas Shrugged, she was incredibly bitter. She's very bitter about
Yes.
and she didn't write any other fiction. She didn't publish
Yes.
any after that. So that's from 57 to 82.
Yes.
When she died.
And so what I find interesting in Rand's trajectory that she knew what she showed where the better alternatives are.
Right.
But in her life, it's almost like We the Living came back to haunt her. The anger and the depression.
Oh, yeah. She was somewhat bitter. I think for a number of reasons. One of which was that I don't think she saw the kind of respect and admiration that she thought she should have gotten when Atlas Shrugged came out, because that was her masterpiece. And the trajectory of the books are more and more cerebral, to the point where Atlas Shrugged is really about the mind and by its absence. And it must have been very, very hard for her, I would expect. Only now, like 30 some years after she's gone, she would be, I think, pleased, one hopes, to see reading discussion groups online, more and more. I'll tell you, I have a number of Rand t-shirts, and in Politically Correct Seattle, I thought, well, how many people can I piss off? So I put one on. First thing happens, I go to Barnes & Noble, and she says, I love your shirt. We just sold a copy of The Fountainhead. I go to Trader Joe's, and 3 people in 3 separate occasions have stopped me and said, I love the shirt.
See?
Yeah.
You know, everyone's reading them.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to that, to these changes, because I think it's also interesting the way Kira. Okay, so we've had this arc, right? So Kira is home with Leo, and she's not at her best. She's very, it's overwhelming for her to have Leo back, right? She cries and she's pleads with him, and she's frightened because she sees that he's still compromised. Then we have the fight with about Tonia, but then at the end of this chapter, then she goes out with Andre, and I noticed that here Kira is very sort of carefree, sort of lighthearted, right? Almost like Antonina Pavlovna, in that, oh, let's just go out, let's just go dance. She's not really feeling anything, as you pointed out, Charles. The music doesn't affect her anymore, but she just wants to go out. She sees that she's got a man there who's desperately in love with her, and she's like, let's just have some drinks. So in terms of that arc of her character, I found that to be very well written and very hard to read as well. And this is clearly a period of great disruption for everybody.
There's a paragraph of Andre explaining why at first he thought he was making a sacrifice to go to the restaurant, and then he liked it. And she goes, why? She asks Andre why. And then he goes on for a paragraph that reminds me of Atlas Shrugged, the theme of the emotional theme, when they're talking about Haley's concerto.
Yeah.
And it's about the theme of rising, and it's just a feeling. It's just a feeling inside. And Andre here, he's just talking about just the pleasure of seeing you across the table, not doing, just,
Right.
and I think that that's like a mini manifesto of the psychology of being able to enjoy your life for the moment. It's like, oh, I'm so happy I get to see the sunrise.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's simple, yet Rand
Right.
always gives it a lot of power. She always makes
Yes.
it be able to feel joy for just a moment is an end in itself. And I think I don't want to read the whole paragraph, but it's this wonderful paragraph that Andre is expressing.
Right.
Kind of enjoys doing nothing but looking at her.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
So
I think it's
here's the communist, and he's the one now who's done this 180, right? So in terms of seeing her as an end in herself, right? At this point, he's the one who's not using her for anything else, whereas everyone else is using everyone else for some other
Right.
as a means rather than an end. And we've got this horrible confusion going on in everyone.
Marilyn, I also think it's important not to forget what Andre gave up to be with Kira that night, and that's attending his party meeting that he chose to skip. And I think if he continues to act that way, it's going to come back and bite him somewhere.
Absolutely. Do you agree? Yeah. I mean, he's putting himself in serious jeopardy.
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
I think she knows. I feel like she's sort of uncomfortable with it at this point. Like, I feel like her saying, you know, oh, let's get a drink is like, how do I deflect? Like, what's happening? Because she's sort of saying, like, you're saying all these things and this is not what you should be saying. Like, this is not your life. This is not where you are. This is not, like, what am I doing to you? Because now, like, the situation is becoming bigger and deeper and, like, what am I going to do? I feel like, you know, this moment where she's like, let's just have drinks is like how, you know, she's like, I've got to get out of this somehow and can't.
Yeah,
So
very good point.
It's just like in the last couple of chapters where she's trying to keep him at a distance, trying to minimize the hurt he's going to feel when either he finds out or she finally does leave him or whatever happens, because she knows it's going to destroy him.
Mm-hmm.
She's trying to soften the blow, but he's not taking the hint, and he's just completely giving up on all of his ideals. Instead of focusing on the future, now he's the one focusing on the present.
there's a friend of mine that summarizes it, that if you play with fire, you can get burned.
Yes, well, it's getting very hot in there. Yeah. Well, yes. So,
Yeah.
any last comments? Anything?
I can't help but think that Rand kind of enjoys torturing people. I think there's a part of her that actually kind of enjoys tweaking the shit out of people.
Well, there's no good story without conflict.
Yes.
Yeah, and she was a master of ratcheting the conflict and making things harder and harder and harder. And that's, I think, partly a writer's desire to entertain, and like when we were talking about the violent aspects of the sex scenes, I think it's as simple as she just wanted people to keep reading.
Well, I also think that she has that desire. She really wants to show the violence of this system, and that even people who were as good as Kira, Leo, and Andre are buckling under it, right? And that even no matter what they try, they aren't able to, they can't win.
Yeah, you know, it's one thing to say, well, the Soviet Union is communist and they're bad and the people are being starved and murdered and all that. And it's another thing to dramatize it. which she did. How many people have actually read Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago? I haven't. I haven't. But I've read this book before, and it hits it home
Yes, very excellent.
every
Excellent
time.
point. Why don't we?
Yeah, it's not just about the loss of life in terms of death. It's about the loss of life in terms of life.
Yes.
You can't.
Yeah.
Adele, way to go.
Yeah.
2 for 2. All right, let's
4-1 for Adele.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good.
excellent.
Yeah, amazing. Good.
All right, so next week, chapters 4 and 5.
You write these things down? Did that just come out of you spontaneously?
Okay. All right, it was wonderful meeting everyone. See you next week.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right. See you next week. Thank you all.
See you next week. Thank you.